feel like, sorry, I'm headed somewhere. Some people are going to get this and some people are not, and that's fine. For those of us, black people, brown people, African American people here in the United States or even abroad, it doesn't matter. It's time for us to start calling on celestial justice, not just for ourselves, but for our benevolent ancestors. The reason that I say that is because this, applying it just to America, this country has yet to be held accountable for the grand atrocities that it has committed against black and brown people historically. And until it is held accountable, the ancestors that are still here, yes, they're here to protect us. They are here to watch over us and guide us through this life. But when do they get to be set free? And I don't mean in the sense that they aren't, coming to visit you anymore or talking to you still, because they'll always do that. They're within you. But what I mean is, when do we untether them from this land? Because continuously, we've noticed, even with the most recent occurrences of plantations burning down on the East Coast, we've noticed that people mourn the plantation, but there's never any talk about the souls that are still reside at those plantations. They hold not meetings, but they use it as a gimmick to get people to show up to these ghost tours, but yet they don't talk about what led up to this person's energy being trapped within this house, within this building. And even after, I forgot the name of the plantation, but it burned down, and they're like, oh, we'll build it again because people want to get married there. This is where someone died. People were raped here. People were graped here. Like, there's so much that goes on, that went on, that they were never held accountable for. No one said anything. And yes, they've issued apologies, but I've noticed with the most recent apology that France gave, they're never specific. And it's really interesting how everyone else can, I'm not saying hold a grudge, because I don't think that's healthy for anybody energetically, but everybody else can ask for justice. But when a black person asks for justice, we're told to get over it. Why is it not okay to say, you know what, our families fought and died here, and you never gave them freedom, not even in death? When is it okay to ask, why would you just stand in the middle of the street? That doesn't make sense. Anyway, when do you say enough is enough? And so I feel like if you're someone who does pray, or if you're someone who does have a spiritual connection or a spiritual practice, I think it's important to, when you're asking for justice and or just, consideration for yourself, also ask for that consideration for your ancestors, because some of them are still here because they have unresolved issues. Some of them are still here because they never had someone to speak up for them, and they no longer have the ability to say, hey, that was wrong and I demand justice on my behalf from God. Or for some people, who the divine mother or the monad, they didn't get to do that. So I think it's important to at least think about it. I don't want to take up very much more of your time, but I was sitting here thinking about that today, and to me it's important to recognize the sacrifices that my ancestors made. We oftentimes don't talk about how grisly or how gruesome slavery was, or the after effects of slavery that we're still witnessing, not just in the women that we know and who we are, but also in the next generation. We're noticing it in men as well. And so it's really important to request that. And I want to go back to what I was saying about France. For those of us who are aware, when they brought, and it's not just France, when they brought slaves here, they brought them in all together in some cases, but also some separated them out. It's a grand atrocity, and I'm not going to go into detail, but I think you know what I'm getting at. They don't talk about it. they will give a blanket statement, oh, we're sorry, you know, but we've said sorry, you have equal rights now, but you really don't have equal rights if you think about it. If you look at the judiciary system, if you look at who's actually being imprisoned for crimes, even though a certain demographic of people tend to commit more atrocities against society, for lack of better words, let's just, to me, it feels like we need to request that. We need to ask for it. We need to start petitioning on their behalf. We can ask for them to petition in the spiritual world, but who petitions for them in the physical world? So I'm not saying like that you can go into a courthouse and say, hey, look, well, maybe you can actually. I'm not like legally trained, so don't, but I find it really interesting. And I think it's about time. It's far overdue. And the fact that we are still suffering from that because it's not something that we readily address. It's not something that we can address in mass because of what everyone is going through. We still have families that are living far below the poverty line in our own communities, while several others have totally adapted this capitalistic ideology. And I get it because this was pushed to us as like, this is what you do to succeed. But really, we're watching the crumbling of imperialism and capitalistic society as we know it. And though we, as Black people, do a lot when it comes to fostering community, I think that in certain areas, especially on the East Coast, I'm not sure about the West Coast, I've only been there a few times, but we get caught up in that mentality of every man for himself. And the problem with every man for himself is oftentimes when you need help, there's no one there for you. So we need to do better at building community, but also having those tough discussions of, okay, we have an aging community of people that, and yeah, I need to get my nails done. But anyway, we have an aging community of people who have a certain belief set that we need to figure out how to holistically approach this, but also how do we heal and help them heal as well, because to an extent they can be kind of traumatizing. And I'm not saying that that's everybody. I think a lot of people have a really good relationship with the older generation, but there are some, unfortunately, due to their own wounds, like they're still healing. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not judging them for where they are on their path. But I am saying, like, it is a conversation that we need to have as a community, because if we don't take care of them, I don't know about you, but I've heard too many horror stories about Black men and women being put in nursing homes where they aren't taken care of, or they develop sepsis because no one is turning them. And that isn't a Black versus white issue. That is an issue with healthcare, well, geriatric healthcare altogether. But at the same time, if we aren't fostering that kind of conversation, if we aren't proactively thinking about this now, what do we do when it's our turn to become elders and eventually ancestors? I don't know, but you get what I'm trying to say. So I don't know, I think it's an interesting thing to think about. It's definitely a conversation that I'd like to revisit. I'm thinking about doing some additional research, and I'll come back with a longer video. But this is just, you can take this as a precursor to a much longer conversation. And if you want to talk about it, or if you have anything to add, or any resources to share, like the Library of Congress or OCLC Webcat, which will help you find some books about these topics, definitely feel free to let me know. I'm always happy to accept resources. Well, resources as in things that will get me to what I need to research. Do you get what I mean? But yeah, just let me know. Thanks. I hope you have a great rest of your day. This has been a really cool conversation. Bye, you guys.